Hello, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of Danny and Courtney Talk About. I'm Danny, and with me, as always, is.
Courtney, also known as Potter Court.
Yes, and as always, it's wonderful having you join me today. So, today's episode, we're going to actually look at a movie I really enjoyed as a child, and I honestly feel like it doesn't really get talked about a lot nowadays, and I feel like it really should. Because I think a lot of other people like myself were affected by this movie. That movie is none other than Jumanji. Now, Courtney, would you please tell everyone what Jumanji is all about?
Jumanji tells the story of a boy named Alan Parrish who finds a mysterious and magical board game hidden near his father's shoe factory. One night, after some family drama between him and his father, Alan begins playing the game with his friend Sarah, only for the game to magically transport him into its jungle and for bats to chase Sarah away before she can do anything to help. 26 years later, so like in the mid 90s, the game is rediscovered by two orphaned children named Judy and Peter, and after they begin playing, they free a much older Alan from the jungle. Soon they realize that the game must be finished in order to fix all of the dangers summoned into the world. Thus, Alan, Judy, Peter, and a much older Sarah agree to continue playing until someone wins. As they keep playing, they encounter various jungle animals and elements, and they work together to try and survive.
Yep, that's pretty much the movie. As a whole, in a nutshell, whatever you guys prefer. Now, there's a little bit of a history behind this movie, but mainly because it actually is an adaptation of a book. Uh, have you read the original book?
I actually had no idea that this was based on a book until like this review, to be honest. Like when I was doing when I usually like research like the trivia and stuff, like I thought this was just like an original idea.
No, actually, it was a picture book by author Chris Van Allsburg, who some of you may also recognize as the author of The Polar Express. That's okay if you haven't read the book. I can literally summarize the entire story for you right here. Two kids playing in the park find a magical board game. They bring it back to their house. They begin playing it, unleashing all sorts of crazy jungle animals. They finish the game. It all goes away, and they return the game back to its original spot. Now, I admit, yeah, that's it's really short, which is it's a shame because it's actually a very creative idea for like a story. Because I mean, we all love board games, right?
And I love board games even to this day.
Yes, so I mean, a magical one, I guess, is a brilliant idea for a story.
And keep
So,
in mind this was like way before like Night at the Museum came out. So it
yes.
kind of did the whole like things come to life idea first.
Anyway, so the book, as short as it was very popular. It, I think, won a Caldecott Medal for its great illustration work. So in the 90s, with the new trend that was going around known as computer generated imagery, or CGI, special effects, I guess they thought this would be the perfect story to do a movie of. Now, Courtney, is this your first time seeing this movie?
The first time seeing it in like a really long time. Like I'm pretty sure I watched this movie a long time ago because it's been literally been that long. I'm pretty sure I liked it that when I first watched it. I don't really remember, but so watching it again, I mean, I thought it was a pretty good movie, but I mean, but it doesn't really like hold up for its time like the CGI.
I'll get to that in a little bit. But yes, Watching it again not too long ago, since, like I said earlier, I loved this movie as a child. I watched it all the time. Um, I still think it's pretty good. Like I said, the idea of the magical board game and like all sorts of crazy jungle animals coming into the real world. It's a very creative story, and I like that the movie kind of expanded upon the original book and kind of answered possible questions like what happens if you stop playing the game, or I thought it was a good story. And I think it for the most part holds up very well, though we'll get to that other stuff in a little bit. Unfortunately, when it was originally released back in 1995, a lot of critics were not very kind to this movie, and the main reason is because they felt that this movie was way too dark and way too intense and way too scary for children. What are your thoughts on this?
Actually, I kind of have to agree on the scary factor because I thought like each time one of the characters would take a turn and then like something would happen, like it was kind of pretty it was kind of creepy. I mean, I don't know if I'd recommend it for small children because they'd probably be like creeped out, honestly, from like the stuff happening.
What would you say is the scariest part for you? Because there's a lot that happens.
Um, I don't know. I would have to say there was a scene where um the Venus flytrap comes out and it tries to eat Peter or something. I think that was like a scene
Oh
that was
yes,
pretty creepy.
yes, that is definitely a pretty scary scenario. While I do sort of agree that yes, this movie can be scary and intense and dark for like children, I still think it's a good movie to expose them to because, well, actually, I don't know if I can explain it better than uh, Band Geek 8408 or Matt Guyan of Books versus Movies can. So I'm gonna just let him explain it for me.
We seem to have entered into a disturbing mindset where we think that children should never be scared of anything ever, and if we somehow expose them to a story that scares them, it'll scar them for life. And you know what? It will. They'll get scared, they'll hide, they'll cry a little, and then they'll get over it. That is how kids grow. And you might be saying, well, shouldn't we let kids be kids? Well, kids get scared. I was scared by a lot of things as a kid. Willy Wonka scared me. The second act of Into the Woods scared me. And this scared me. And you know what? I don't feel like my childhood was sacrificed. And the funny thing is, once I got over my fear of these stories and was able to actually watch them all the way through, I loved them. I couldn't get enough of them. I felt like a grown-up because I was watching something that I had once been terrified of. And I think that's why this movie aged as well as it did. It gives you the overwhelming sense that things could go wrong, and that's frightening. But it gives you an even more overwhelming sense that everything will be alright, and that is heartening.
So yeah, I couldn't explain it better myself.
And same here.
So while I know every child is different, I still think, it's quite an accomplishment like to overcome something scary or dark that you were once afraid of.
Which is kind of the moral of this movie.
Well, it's one of the. Oh, yeah, actually, yes, it is. Because it does involve the characters. Speaking of which, let's talk about the characters. Let's talk about the first two main characters and then the second two main characters. What did you think about Alan and Sarah?
I honestly liked both of them. I mean, even though of course they did change age because it was um, even though it was sort of like a time travel-ish kind of a movie, but
It,
but other than of course they changed age, I thought themselves as characters was pretty neat to like watch as like the movie went on and stuff.
yeah, I thought so too. I especially like how like it shows what an effect that magical board game has on them because as you mentioned earlier, it sucks Alan in when he's like a child, and I like that it kind of leaves like a traumatizing impact on Sarah and Alan too once he like is has escaped from the jungle.
Well, then
Um,
again, though, like when Ellen got sucked into the board, like all of a sudden, like these bats were like chasing her out of the house. So I don't really blame her for getting traumatized.
yeah, I would probably be scared if a flock of bats started chasing me. But yeah, another thing I like is like before like that happens, that like you mentioned, there is some drama between Alan and his father. And one thing I like is when he returns like back home years later, he kind of sees what an impact he's actually had like on his parents' lives and ultimately the whole town. And it's like it's kind of heartbreaking when you think about it, like from a realistic standpoint or
Yeah,
viewpoint.
I mean, it kind of is in a way, because it's kind of like that time travel at that slight time travel element, I guess, kind of thrown in there. Because it's not like once, you know, they complete the game, they stay in that in the 90s.
Well, let's not get too far into spoilers. But yeah, I think I gotta say they're both. Also, I should point out they're both really strong characters. Like they could have easily like just run away after that point, but the fact that they face their fears and continue playing that board game until someone wins and sticking by each other's side the whole time, that's amazing.
I know, and like especially like at one point that hunter came was summoned at some point, and then like of course he was after our main characters.
Yes, we'll get to the hunter in a little bit. Another thing I really like is I like the performances between the late Robin Williams and Bonnie Hunt, respectively. I thought they had very good chemistry between one another. What did you think?
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I liked the chemistry that they showed both on screen, and I thought Bonnie Hunt played a good older Sarah.
Yeah, you could totally believe that those two are like good friends, even after all these years, and after all that psychological trauma.
Yeah.
But yeah, now let's talk about the other two main characters, Judy and Peter. What did you think about Judy and Peter?
I mean, they didn't really make much of an impact me as like Ellen and Sarah, but I mean, I thought they were still good characters nonetheless.
I thought they were pretty good. Like Alan and Sarah, they have their own emotional baggage too. Like their parents just died, according to the movie, and I guess they're having difficulty coping. And then, of course, you gotta acknowledge that they do help. Like, if it wasn't for them, Alan would have never gotten out of the board game.
Oh yeah, I mean that is true.
And besides, without them, they could never like continue the game and win it. So, I think they're good characters. Um, and it's actually funny. Judy is played by a young Kirsten Dunst.
I
Um,
know it's kind of funny actually to just see like a young Kirsten Dunst.
yes, you see her running away from spiders, only for years later to have her get rescued by a spider
Now
multiple
that
times.
is irony.
There aren't too many other important characters in the movie, although there is one I think we should talk about. What did you think about the closest thing this movie has to a villain, the hunter Van Pelt?
I actually could not believe like well, I mean of course it's the board obviously, but it's like he was just persistent of just trying to like kill like our characters. It's like, man, like
I th I think in a sense he's probably the scariest danger unleashed from the jungle because like all the others that are unleashed, like they're mostly just animals, and animals are just following their instincts, like either to protect themselves or to catch food. But no, Van Pelt is a human, so he knows exactly what he's doing. Also, I don't know if you noticed, he's played by the same actor who plays Alan's father.
I did notice that actually. That was just like so neat.
I think it's supposed to be symbolic, but I think Bob Belcher can summarize it best for me.
Ugh, you were right. It's not subtle. See?
Anyway, there are other characters too, like I mentioned. Like one character I thought was pretty good was I liked Carl, the police officer. That guy cannot catch a break.
I just felt so sorry for him because like he worked in like the shoe shop in like the late 60s, and then like he ended up getting fired, and then like you see him again as this like police officer,
Not to
and
mention
then
his.
like all these horrible things keep happening to his car. It's like, oh my
I know
gosh.
that poor car.
Oh.
But yeah. Anyway, so as we've explained, we feel that the story is very good and it holds up very well over 20 years later. And we feel like a lot of the characters also hold up pretty well as over time as well. Unfortunately, I think the one thing that doesn't really hold up as well as you might think are the special effects. Now, let me just point this out. Back in I think for 1995 standards, these were very impressive for the time. Unfortunately, I don't think they hold up as well as they did back then. Who do you think was the worst offender in terms of special effects?
I'll see. I'm gonna say it's between the monkeys and the pelican.
Yeah, I think I'd have to go with the monkeys because I think all the monkeys are done with computers, and while it might have looked impressive back then, they look really fake now.
I know, you you could like compare this to say, I don't know, the Rise of the Planet of the Apes, and like, well, obviously that was a better job done than say this movie.
Yes. Another effect that I don't think holds up very well are the spiders, the giant spiders. Now, they're unlike the monkeys, they're actually a practical effect, but the way they move kind of makes them look artificial. Like you've seen spiders before, they don't move like that, do they?
No, they don't move like that at all. Like,
But then again, they're giant spiders. I don't know if you'd pay attention to how they're moving. You'd probably be going, you'd be freaking out, wouldn't you be?
yeah, and I try to like, I don't know, like depending on the scenario, either try to defend myself or run away. And
So you said the pelican as a special effect didn't hold up. What makes you think that?
I don't know, because like it looks like, I don't know, it looked like one of those like animatronics. Like, I don't know, you'd see in like those theme parks, and you could kind of tell that it's not like a legit pelican.
Yeah. I gotta be honest, it is a little weird that out of all the jungle animals you could use, they went with a pelican. Like, aren't there more dangerous birds? But you went with a dastardly pelican.
A
Well,
dastardly pelican.
well, it's technically a whole flock of pelicans, but we follow one of them after it steals the board. Um, but yeah, anyway, I think the Pelican at first they did it with like computers, but then they used a practical one. Now, usually when movies do that, it usually is to make the effects look more realistic. Like good examples are like Jurassic Park, and I think Lord of the Rings did it as well. Unfortunately, I don't think it always works that way. For example, I think another unfortunate victim of this, the lion. Now, there are shots where it's obvious he's a practical effect, and then there are shots where he's obviously CGI. Any thoughts on the lion?
The lion I thought was just okay. I mean, kind of like you said, it either looks like it's practical or it's CGI. I mean,
Now, that's not to say, though, that all of the effects are bad. That's not true at all. I think there are some effects in this movie that do hold up very well. For example, I think the effect with the plants growing in the house, which you pointed out is probably the scariest part. I thought that was an impressive effect.
yeah, and also the scene where Alan is like gets trapped in like the flooring.
Oh, when it turns into quicksand?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Of course, we can't like not talk about like one of the biggest spectacles of this film, the animal stampede with the rhinos, the elephants, and the zebras.
I know, that was pretty cool, I'd have to admit.
Run! It's a stampede! It's a game! Don't look back!
Yeah, I think that effect holds up pretty well. Especially like in the middle of the movie when they're in the middle of town and the stampede just starts up again. Particularly this one scene where Peter hides in a car and then these elephants like trample on the car and trap him inside.
Hmm.
As much as I love elephants, I would not want to be in that situation. Also, there's rhinos and zebras running around too, and those guys, I guess, are dangerous.
Yeah. Hmm.
I thought the crocodile was a pretty good special effect too. Any thoughts on the crocodile?
Yeah, I'd have to agree. The crocodile was a pretty decent effect.
So yeah, a lot of these effects, even though a lot of them look really fake and don't hold up very well, some of them I think are still pretty good. But I think the most important thing we should look at is how well do these effects help to tell the story? Now, you probably are confused at what I'm saying, but let me give you an example. Let's look at the 1933 classic film King Kong. Now, looking at it today, we can obviously tell these are really fake effects. But you have to consider, back in 1933, these were amazing special effects, which I know we can make the same argument about this movie. But an important question is, as fake as those effects were, do they help to tell the story? And with King Kong, the answer is yes. People still adore that movie even to this day. Now, Courtney, do you think the effects work in telling this story?
Yeah, I mean, I think so too, and I'm probably gonna quote the author of the book, who actually, believe it or not, approved of this movie, saying that it did a good job of showing the chaos of like all the animals and all the chaos of Jumanji and stuff.
Well, that's good. It's very rare to hear that an original author approving of a movie adaptation.
Yeah, it's not every day like the author enjoys like their movie adaptations.
Yeah. Now let's talk about something more fun. Like, what was your favorite scene in the entire movie, if you have one? If you have more than one?
I have a favorite scene where it's kind of in the beginning where Alan and the kids try to convince Sarah to continue playing the game, and um, Alan tricks her into thinking that he'll listen to her, but really but really he doesn't, and it was kind of a funny scene.
Yeah. Of course, following that leads to what you said was the probably the scariest scene in the whole movie. Wow, that's like an emotional whiplash, isn't it? First you have a clever scene and then
Yes.
holy cow, that's scary. Hmm.
Oh.
I'm trying to think what my favorite scene is. I think my favorite scene probably has to be any scene with the animal stampede because I mean it's impressive seeing all of those. I know they're not really there, but all of those animals like trampling through like a city and destroying things, or at the beginning like or when they first show up, trampling through a house.
Yeah.
But other
Mhm.
than that, what was another scene I liked? Um, I guess I did kind of like that scene when they're in the department store and Van Pelt holds the other characters hostage in order to lure Alan there so that he can, well, finish him off. What did you think of that scene?
Yeah, I mean, I kind of enjoyed that scene too.
Um, of course, I personally think the whole movie's a ton of fun to enjoy. There's a lot of other great scenes. So yeah, all I can say really is if you haven't seen it at this point, I think you guys really should check it out. And a good timing too. It's 2015 as we're recording this, which means the movie is turning 20 years old. There'll be a good anniversary party.
And from what I've heard, next year we're supposed to get a brand new Jumanji movie.
I heard about that. Do we really need another one? I mean, yes, I know the effects in this one are kind of dated, but I mean, everything else works just fine. But you never know until we see it. Um, I will say though, I think if I remember correctly, before we go, here's some fun trivia. This movie was actually very popular when it first came out. I think mainly because of its special effects, which were, as I mentioned, very avant-garde at the time. Because of its popularity, I think they got an animated TV show, which I have yet to see.
I haven't seen it
Uh,
either, to be
that's okay.
honest.
One thing I have done though is, I guess to tie into the movie, they released a board game of of the movie, and I played it, and I still own it, and thankfully it does not unleash wild jungle animals into the real world, but it's still a lot of fun, I think. If you're expecting it to look like the original, like board game, how it looks in the movie, don't. It's just a traditional board game. Although I think there are fans of the movie who actually have created a real replica of the game board. That would be cool to have, wouldn't it be?
That would be cool, actually, to have like a replica of like the board from Jumanji.
Yeah, just as long as it doesn't actually unleash like all the terrible stuff. Like, do we really need to summon a ferocious lion or a bunch of crazy monkeys or a stampede?
Yeah. Hmm.
Anyway, let's give our final thoughts on the movie. Courtney, what did you think?
Overall, I'm gonna give this a thumbs up. I thought it was a good movie. and I probably recommend it if you haven't seen it. And it's a good Robin Williams film too.
Yes, I give this movie a big thumbs up as well. I think the story and characters are very good. While a lot of the effects may not be so good, you know, they still succeed in telling a good story. And if you want, like, I will say, you know, obviously there are a lot of scary, intense moments. So I would caution young children before they see it, but you never know. They may like it a lot, or they may find it absolutely terrifying, go hide, uh, cry a little bit, and then come back to it years later and enjoy it and feel more grown up for it. So yeah, anyway, that was our discussion on Jumanji. This is Danny here saying, I am awesome, so are you. Courtney is especially awesome for enjoying this movie.
And you're awesome too, Danny. This is Courtney signing out.
In the jungle, you must wait until the dice read 5 or 8.
You killed her.
Now, okay, you can just enjoy this stupid monkey clip.
Stupid monkey.